Welcome to We Need to Name This, where we unpack the hidden curriculum of academia with scholars of color. And I'm Ebony Peruse, and this is my co-host,
Laura-Ann Jacobs.
And today our episode is entitled, We Need to Name This.
Ooh, we need to name this. That is the title of also the series.
Yes.
So as we kick it off, I guess we should start with, and I'll ask you, Ebony, what is this series about? Why did we decide to start it?
Yeah, okay, so listen, everybody. First of all, I want to say Laura-Ann is my ace boon coon. I love her to death. And so when we're in graduate school, we're just like, she'll be like, I have this project or this organization I'm joining. And I'll be like, oh, I have this project. So if I do that project, you do this project. And so that's kind of how we've been going for like 5 years now. So during the pandemic, I had this idea. And so I called Laura-Ann and I said, hey, I have this idea for a project that I think will really help scholars, right? Those who are deciding if academia is something for them, those who want to know what academia is, those who are in academia, and those who want to leave academia, right? And so I was like, and I remember, I think I sent it in a text message first, and I said, we need to name this, right? And she was like, that's got to be the title. That's the title. I was like, what you mean that's the title? She was like, we need to name this. We need to name the hidden curriculum of academia, right? And so this series is really helping to unpack some of the hidden curriculum that often first generation students, students of color, low income students, students who haven't had exposure to academia or haven't had family in academia or who are new to this country, right? To learn about what academia is and whether that's a space where they want to do their work.
Yeah.
Did that cover it?
I think so. Yes. So I did get a phone call from you over maybe Thanksgiving. I was like, I'm full, but yeah, well, let's talk about this project idea. So we did that. And then the project kind of grew from that. And some of it, at least too, when you were telling me about the idea, we were thinking about, we had been in person in graduate school, and we had so many informal conversations with our friends and our community members about, I didn't know that this grant existed. I didn't know that this fellowship existed. I didn't know what that is. So-and-so got a postdoc. I don't know what that is. Mm-hmm. And then it became, that's how we learned a lot of things about like our potential future trajectories. Mm-hmm. So I know also that you said, it's time to call on community and let's see who wants to join us for this like nearly 20 episode series. I said, I don't know if people love us that much. And every person that we asked said yes, which was outstanding and amazing. I'm so thankful and appreciative, but this is definitely a community effort. So really excited for that.
And so we're just really excited to share with you all the wisdom of our community and to get you're going to get to meet some amazing scholars and POC that are doing work in academia right now and doing work outside of academia and working towards social justice and anti-racism in our communities. So you're in for a treat. Right?
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you, Laura-Ann,
okay.
I think just for you all to get to know us, because we are in every episode. Laura-Ann, tell me what brought you to academia?
This is such a question of like, I have never know how much or how little to say. Yeah. But I'll give it an attempt. So I'm a former high school English teacher, and I taught public high school in South Carolina for 6 years. And when I started teaching, that was my lifelong dream. It was the goal that I had. I felt like it was just going to be, I got the job at the school where I did my student teaching. That's where I was going to retire. It was going to just be amazing. Mm-hmm. And so I started teaching courses that were what my school had labeled more remedial courses in English language arts. And then as I got more experience, they were trying to give me these honors courses or give me AP certified. And I said, well, I want to still teach the courses I used to teach before. Mm-hmm. So I was seeing some really big opportunity gaps within my school and within the classes that I taught, and also a lot of inequities across the way that students in these groups were treated, the opportunities they had at school, the students based on race, gender, ability, so many ways that students were labeled and tracked and grouped. I was like, what is going on here? And it really upset me. And I had a lot of questions about it. I was trying to do a lot of things in my classroom, but I just had more and more questions about things. And actually, my now husband said, you have a lot of questions. I think graduate school is a place where if you go back to school and get a PhD, that's the place where you could ask more questions. So it was a lot of grief. I applied to grad school just because I had more questions, not because I knew a PhD was for me, not because I even really wanted it, just because it was one more question, a place where I could ask questions for a little while. I applied. I wasn't sure at that time I was even going to commit. I got this email on the day my letter was due, I think from Nell Duke, who said like, hey, have you made a decision? Like, today's the final day. And I was like, oh my gosh, sweating, crying, signed my letter, sent it off, turned in my letter of not intending to return to my school on the same day, and then ended up in Michigan. So.
And we met.
We met on that first day. So I don't know, that's a lot. That's a lot of things, but wondering, Ebony, what brought you to academia? How did you get here?
Yeah, so I have a similar story. So I was a high school teacher, a special educator for 10 years. I taught in DC, and then there was an opening at my neighborhood school, which I wanted to teach at. So I taught there for 8 years. When I was a student at my former high school, it was very international, right? There was a lot of students from just first generation students from different countries. Their parents were immigrants and their children went to school and was going to school together. So we had a very ethnically and racially diverse school. By the time I went to teach there, it was predominantly Black, African-American, African, Caribbean, right? And so a very Black school. And so I was excited to go back and teach in my community. As a special educator, so as a student in that school, I was an advanced student, right? So your experience is very limited as an advanced student, right? You don't really see what's happening in schools and what's happening in your school necessarily because you get all the opportunities, you're going on all the trips, you know what I'm saying? Everyone's kind of catering to you when you're labeled as advanced. As a special education teacher, though, I started to see the ways in which opportunities, students with disabilities did not get the same kind of opportunities as others. And I also saw that socially in terms of very low expectations for students with disabilities, right? And often it was only a few students ever made it out of special education, right? Even though special education is supposed to be something to support students so that they can get the supports that they need to then be included in general education classes, it was really, if you got labeled as a special education student, you practically stayed a special education student as long as you're labeled, right? And very few students I saw like filtering into general education classes, and then students who were interested in being in advanced classes like AP courses, they were often blocked and thwarted from doing so. And so I started to really wanted to think about how teachers play a role in, removing those opportunities, how we play a role, like our unconscious bias impacts the kind of decisions we make in an IEP meeting, engaging with parents, engaging with family, engaging with students, and how those perspectives actually limit the types of teaching we do and the kind of opportunities that we open up for our students, right? Because we are gatekeepers. And so just like Laura-Ann, I had questions, right? How do we support teachers? Like, I can talk to teachers one-on-one, but like, how do I impact more? How do I make a bigger impact? And in my mind, I was like, well, first I thought law school was the thing because I want to be a child advocate. Law school ain't for everybody. Okay.
You say that like you don't have a Juris Doctorate.
I mean, yes, I have a degree or whatever, but law school was just not for me. That was not for me. And so I was like, okay, so how do I make this larger impact? And so I started looking at PhD programs because I was like, I want to go into teacher education, right? If I can impact more teachers, then they impact students. And if they're in the classroom for 20 or 30 years, even 10 years, they impact exponentially more students that I can impact on my own. And so I went to Michigan with Laura-Ann to start answering these questions. But I was first generation, right? So I didn't really know what this thing was. I just knew that I needed a space to think about these questions. And doing my research, I figured a PhD program would be the place to do that thinking and figure out what I'm going to do next. So yeah, that's what brought me to academia.
A lot of overlap. A lot
Yes.
of overlap. The experience of teaching, though, has been really something that I've always come back to, and as definitely something that grounds me is, revisiting my experience as a teacher and finding new ways to still be engaged as a teacher during my PhD program. But listening to you say like, oh, I want to work with teachers, teacher education, I'll apply for this program. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm having thoughts back to like our first like cohort meeting. And I was like, does everyone here have an idea of what a PhD is? I was in a program for literacy, language, and culture because I was also knew that I just cared so much about, I wanted to know what was happening with students in classrooms and how, especially with English language arts, we create invitations for them to share about themselves, to learn about themselves, to learn about the world. That was kind of like what I knew, that I thought that was cool. And I applied for this program, but I was so not as strategic or as deliberate as I might have been. And I wish that someone had done a little series to tell me about what I should think about before I apply to graduate school.
So and hence why we're here.
Here we are. Yes. This is a very exciting series. For me, we are also recording this intro episode actually at the end of a very long process. So at the end of having conducted all of the interviews, we have 18 interviews with 26 guests. And we have gone through, we've done the editing and the review. We've gone through this process for a long time and revisited things. And it's so interesting to me now, it being 2022. We did most of the recordings in 2021 early. And so some things that just stand out to me that I want to mention also about like the context of filming and recording these is like, this is, 1 year into the pandemic. It's before vaccines are available. People are on Zoom recording things from their homes without having been in person, without having been in community the way that we were used to for over a year. And, Ebony and I thought, we'll message our people, see who wants to come. And it's people's, capacity is much different, at that time. And everyone said, we absolutely want to do it. We absolutely will make time for this, which is just amazing. We had people, I was in the middle of writing my dissertation.
Yeah. I don't even, we look back and Laura-Ann was like, I don't even know why I said yes.
At these and I'm like, wow, I look really unwell. Like I can see, I was taking writing breaks to do these interviews. Ebony was a new mom.
Yes.
You still are anyway. You're always a new mom. Maybe not, but a new mom, you were planning a move.
Yes.
A move.
Yeah.
So a lot of big things for us personally had happened, but also for our peers and our guests. A lot of them have moved. They were in the middle of interviewing for jobs, completing their own dissertations, in the middle of their prelims, which we'll talk about what those are later. They were, if they're on tenure track, they might be at a review point for them, and it was really fun also at the end of things for me. We had everybody's names written down as our guests. And as we're reviewing them, I had to go in and update. No, this person's doctor now.
Yeah.
This person's doctor now. So it's a cool thing to watch the transition into doctorhood with our community. That's been a really cool thing for me. I don't know, Ebony, if there are things that stand about the context of filming to you.
Yeah. So I felt like at the time when we were recording, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm learning so much. And I've gone through the process, right? Because folks have had different experiences, right? And when we went back and reviewed video, I was like, oh my gosh, and there's more things. And so what I would suggest y'all do, if you watch this in chunks or if you watch them straight through, depending on where you are at the time, it just hits different. Right. So I was reviewing a video with Dr. Chandra Alston. She's my advisor. And when we were doing the video, there were certain things that I picked up because I was new faculty, right? So now a year into being faculty, there were other things that she said was like, oh, shoot, now I know what that is. You know what I'm saying? So for y'all out there, as you hit different points in your career, go back and watch these videos because they just hit differently. So I'm just really excited to hear whether this is really helpful for folks. And then also want to hear like what else you want to learn. I'm trying to talk my homegirl into doing the season 2. So if y'all out here, you know what I'm saying, convince my girl. Okay.
Yeah, at the end of almost every episode, you're like, I have an idea for another episode. You can see my face is like overload. But I agree. I hope that we'll have more in the future. But we have got a lot of people. We've got early grad students to later dissertating grad students. We've got early career faculty. We've got, I don't know what it is. See, I just still don't even advanced career faculty, right?
And tenured faculty.
Clinical assistant, associate professor, postdocs. You know, we have got a big group of people that are at different points, different experiences, and speak to the different moments in the trajectory of an academic. So those are the things that are really exciting to me. I think it's at the end of it, I'm like, wow, that was a big scope and scale we did. I think it's, I hope it's meaningful for others.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I do want to highlight is that we created this space for people of color, right? And so we are highlighting people of color. We know that other people can benefit from this. And so we want everyone to watch, but this is really for POC, right? We know that the academic space has not been a space for us, right? And so part of supporting our community is sharing our knowledge, right? And so this was something very important to us. And I think this is the reason why Laura-Ann said yes, because Laura-Ann is about giving back to community. And so even though she was going through all that stuff, she was like, I'm gonna do it because it can help people. And so we're hoping very much that it will definitely help our folks.
Well, thank you. I am all about trying to give and contribute and think about what my own experience and learning has been that might, be helpful to others. But I do most of that alongside you, Ebony, most of the time from you giving a little nudge. So,
It's reciprocal. Understand that.
Okay. I hear. Okay. Well, I think maybe are there any other things you want to add before we kick this off, or we want to wrap this one up and be just excited for things to come?
Yes. Yep. Thank you all for tuning in. And we look forward to just hearing from you, your comments, your perspectives, and knowledge that this brings up for you that you'd like to share with our community.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for We Need to Name This, a series where we unpack the hidden curriculum of academia. Join us for our next episode, I Got Accepted, Now What? With Dr. Naomi May Wilson. For more information, visit www.weneedtonamethis.com.